Thank you, dear young lady. A very warm welcome and good morning to our guest in Bhubaneswar, Mr. Sandeep Khanna, and his lovely book with a very interesting title, Tempest on River Silent, a story of last 50 years of India. So, Sandeep ji, may I start by asking you, what prompted you to give this title to this book? And would you like to tell us a little more, especially if you've noticed the way it is printed, you could actually read it, Tempest, a story of last on river. So there are these two lines which happen. So share a little bit about this with us.
I believe that's the modern way of presenting. The book is last 50 years of India's social, cultural, economic change, as I have seen it. So it's written in anecdotal form, story form, day-to-day changes that we've seen in India in the last 50 years. That's the focus of the book. Though that's not the only theme. It has two other themes. I've also created some fictional characters who lived through this time period. So it's also their story. And then there are some spiritual lessons or lessons of life which I've drawn from the journey of India and the journey of these characters. So those are the three themes in the book. The title, River, is, it's like human life. There is a youth stage, there is a maturity stage, there is an inevitable fall in the sea. The distinctive thing about the river is that it is always moving, and that is what keeps it fresh. So individuals, communities, nations, which are constantly evolving, constantly discussing, challenging themselves, remain fresh. But when we start holding to our beliefs and ideas too rigidly, that's when decay starts. So that was the reference to river. Tempest is, yes, it's a storm, but the way I meant tempest here is zeal for learning. It's curiosity, challenge, discussion. This tempest must never die. One of the building blocks of the Indian civilization is Shastrarth, or discussion. So that discussion, that challenge must never die. 300 years ago, if we thought that Newtonian physics was the final truth, we would never have reached the stage today of quantum physics or atomic physics. So that was the reference to Tempest. And then silence is the silence of the universe. It's the language of the heart, which doesn't need any words. And then somewhere the word silent to me also captured the loneliness of the soul. The way nature has made us, the way I look at it, the way nature has created us, every soul is a lonely soul in this world. So that's why I use the word silent. But in a very interestingly, Shubha, one reviewer who reviewed the book has interpreted River Silent as the ongoing, old, rich heritage and tradition of India which continues, and Tempest are the winds of change which are blowing ever so strongly. So we are at that confluence point between modernity and tradition. That's how that reviewer, which is also the way you interpret it.
So I'll just read one short para that he's put on his, which I found very evocative. It says, from sipping Campa Cola to buying only half a loaf of bread. Some of you might remember those chotu breads which used to come at some point. From TV serials like Hum Log to the phenomenon of Tendulkar, not Virat Kohli. Tempest on River Silent takes you on a nostalgic and exhilarating journey through India's transformative decades. It's extremely I would like to compliment you on the use of your language. It is so evocative, and I particularly marked two places which I wanted to read here. When the sun shines in England, gods of all religions must want to live there. There are these lines which he keeps putting in between. There's another one. Rain is the finest celebration of nature in the torrid tropics. The leaves and grasses become young with life. Branches of trees sway in majestic abandon. Bare-bodied kids splash mischievously in puddles of water and release paper boats in them. And people seeking shelter here and there smile at those temporarily sharing the same roof. There's another beautiful line in the same paragraph which says, the smell of rain-soaked earth is a fragrance bottled on our planet and sold in the heavens. I can go back to read these lines. They are most of them, and I just read these from one part. There are so many of them. I also noticed that you have described some cities in great depth. So you begin with London, you talk about Delhi, you go to Chennai, and then you come back to London, and many other places in these 500 odd pages. Tell us a little more about your travels. I'm sure you must have visited these places, why you wrote about them. Share a little more on that, if you would like, please.
So, while these characters are all fictional, Shubha, I have taken the main protagonist to all those parts of India, the way I've stitched up the story, where I have either lived or traveled extensively in. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to write on them. So yes, you can describe India at a high level, but then if you want to go do a deep dive, it can only be done if you've experienced it yourself. So that's why I've taken the protagonist from Delhi through to Kanpur, Lucknow, Calcutta, Madras, London and all that. These are all places where I have personally lived in or traveled extensively in.
And which one of those places, it's not a right question. Sometimes when people ask you what is your favorite this or that, but if you do have a special liking for any one of these places, which one would it be? Or if you have a liking for each of these places for something special, would you like to tell us?
Well, right now my favorite city is Bhubaneswar. There is a line in Bachchan's Madhushala, "Jahan kahin mil baithe hum tum, wahin kahin ho Madhushala." So wherever friends meet, that's the best place. So right now my friends are all here. Sanjeev, Ranjana, Alka, Ashwini, they are all here. So right now Bhubaneswar is my favorite place. But not to answer your question more seriously, I've enjoyed Chennai a lot, and I've also enjoyed London a lot. And I must say I'm enjoying my time in Gurgaon as well.
So what inspired you to kind of capture this journey of India? It's not an easy story to tell in 500 pages, the last 5 decades or 6 decades. It's a very tough thing to do, in fact. So what inspired you to write a book like this? I believe this is your first novel.
It is, yeah.
So what inspired you to take on such a challenging task?
Well, it was, this discussion we would have with my friends sitting over here, that the change we've experienced in India in our lifetime has been dramatic, has been breathtaking. So that comment triggered off this idea of writing something on this dramatic change. That's where it all started from.
And you have also a very interesting way of writing, which Mr. Khanna has, in which he moves from the sublime to the mundane so effortlessly. I'll just give you one example. In a chapter he says, "Our classroom was on the first floor, and for that naughty holy balloon to have come from outside, not only would it have had to travel 30 feet upwards, but also make a bend of at least 45 degrees. How can it come from outside?" Miss Trehan fumed. "Tell me now, or I will report the entire class to Dr. Oberoi." So this is a scene in the classroom when the boys are playing a prank on the teacher.
That's right. Yeah.
And in the very next paragraph he says, "Friendship is a cocktail that comes in many colors and tastes." And it was one of Sanju's gang of pranksters who stood up and whatever. Similarly, it's very interesting. You have moved from metaphysical or very abstract concepts. So in Masters of Business Administration, which I never really thought of frankly in spiritual or metaphysical terms, he begins by talking about Indians have held education as sacrosanct from times immemorial. Education has been the locomotive for knowledge, excellence and livelihood in Bharat. Were you inspired by Bharat? India being named Bharat, or I'm sure you wrote this before the Bharat.
I thought our constitution says India, that is Bharat.
Okay. Goddess Saraswati in fact represents learning, and then you talk about the universities of ancient India, and suddenly he moves down to Dev and I and our many friends seeking master's level education and postgraduate professional courses were carrying on in this centuries old revered Indian tradition of higher learning. So I would like to compliment you on this amazing capacity to kind of switch between two very different worlds. Because as an author, I find it very difficult to negotiate. If I'm in this physical, very mundane plane, to suddenly move to an abstract. So have you been inspired by any author in particular or somebody whose style that you really admire? Please tell us.
Actually, I was chatting with Shrujit yesterday, and he asked me exactly the same question. So my biggest inspiration has been a Hindi poet, Gopal Das Neeraj. I've read various other authors, as all of us would have, but if there is one single inspiration, that comes from Neeraj. And he used to write spiritual poetry laced with romance. In fact, I forgot to mention when you asked me where the book came from and how these themes got created. So I have only recently, last 6-7 years back, realized how our old scriptures are classified, the Shrutis and Smritis. I didn't know till very recently that the Shrutis cannot be ascribed to an author. They are the Ved and Upanishads, and Smritis are Ramayana, Mahabharata. So the Smritis bring the Shrutis to life, because the Shrutis tend to be abstract and prosaic, and the Smritis bring them to life. This was at a lofty civilizational level, and I just drew inspiration from that at my small, insignificant level by creating these characters who lived through this time. So therefore, you find me moving from that sort of higher sublime, as you beautifully described, Shubha, from the sublime level down to the life of these characters. So there are a lot of chapters like this which start at a at a higher level or a sublime level, which you refer to in a very complimentary way. Thank you for that. And then it comes down to the lives of these characters. So biggest inspiration is Neeraj, who used to basically write spiritual poetry but laced with romance.
Would you like to recite any of the poets that you might remember?
I remember, how much time do we have? We have only half an hour.
Enough to hear a few lines that you remember so well.
Yeah, I mean, next time if KLF can give me a full day, I'll be able to do better justice to Neeraj. No, but yesterday also we recited, so okay, I'll recite something which I didn't recite yesterday, Shujit. सफ़र ये सांस का अब ख़त्म होने वाला है, जो जागता था मुसाफिर वो सोने वाला है, ना सोच तू कि सिएगा वो तेरी चादर भी. This is how Neeraj has interpreted Gita. So there is a comment of Krishna's in Gita that I am the creator but I am not the doer. Krishna is the catalyst but not the doer. So how Neeraj paraphrased that in his poetry, ना सोच तू कि सिएगा वो तेरी चादर भी, वो सिर्फ सुई में धागा पिरोने वाला है. दुखी सभी हैं यहाँ, I don't mean that you are unhappy, but this is, दुखी सभी हैं यहाँ अपने अपने सुख के लिए, मेरे लिए तो ना कोई भी रोने वाला है. And one last line, जो इस नगर की लगाता है फेरी सदियों से, the endless time, father time, काल पुरुष, जो इस नगर की लगाता है फेरी सदियों से, वो और कोई नहीं एक खिलौने वाला है. So this is spiritual poetry which is laced with romance, and the images are these simple images of khilone wala, sui, dhaga, etc.
Thank you, that was really beautiful. And I must tell the persons here that it is not that all his chapters begin with very abstract terms and then suddenly become very real. You have this uncanny ability of taking the reader by surprise. So you'll be talking about something very ordinary and suddenly there will be this interesting interpretation of life or something. So it's not that there's a pattern, and that is what makes it very, very interesting. And I would just like to make one more mention here. This is, he's talking about schooling, and this resonated so much with me as a middle class product that, the Gurukul system of education had been replaced even before independence by the modern school system. And various forms of schools, state-funded government schools, Kendriya Vidyalaya, and privately run public schools were affiliated to different boards. This is the line where I want to say, urban, middle and upper classes always sought privately run public schools for their children, where the medium of education was English and the fee was high. It's a very telling commentary on society and how we perceive each other. In another place, he has said that if ever you have to go for branding, you must, it's a kind of a no-brainer. I forget the exact language that you've used, but you've said that.
No, what I have mentioned there is that when I got admission into a school, into a business school, which was widely regarded, socially regarded as a top business school, the contrast in the eyes of my parents' friends changed. So they started admiring me that much more.
Yes.
And therefore, I thought it's a no-brainer that if you have to decide where to send your children to, or your, the children of your friends to, recommend them the best known places.
Yeah,
That was a no-brainer.
So brand value, and then after writing such an interesting sentence which makes you think for 2 minutes, he comes immediately to the Ashwath Public School, was one such example located on Max Muller Marg in the heart of Delhi. So I just wanted to share with the audience that his ability to move from very abstract and very inspiring lines to very normal and ordinary English is interesting. You have also spoken about death in a manner very different from what one generally reads. There's not so much of fear, but it's like acceptance of something very beautiful. Would you like to share with the audience your views and what inspired you to?
So I think the comment there, which was picked up in some of the previous sessions also, is that death is beautiful in its spiritual force. And unless the old die, how will the new come, Shubha? The old flower has to get shriveled and go back into the soil from where it germinated from. And then the next day, or when the season changes, a new flower comes. So the old have to make way for the new. So that's what and then of course the river has to fall inevitably in the ocean. Also, death is, and as we discussed at this session yesterday as well, death is the debt that all of us have to repay to earth. So we all have several debts in our life. You have a debt to the Guru, which you pay in the form of Guru Dakshina. You have a debt to your father, which you repay in the form of taking the generation forward, and whenever the unfortunate day comes, doing his last rites respectfully. You have a debt to the mother, one of the biggest debts, which you can only repay by becoming a good human being. And then there is a debt to earth, which you have to repay through death. All this is borrowed from the earth. It has to go back there. The day we stop doing that, the day man conquers death, the day we become immortal, might lead to a bigger disaster. So that's why I've described death. And then there is another line, not from Neeraj though, which I remembered. On death, it is some other poet who I don't know. But that line is it's such a strong line, it's always left a very deep impact on me. So that line is, Zindagi baap ki manind saza deti thi. Life was punishing me like a strict father. Zindagi baap ki manind saza deti thi. Rehem dil maa ki tarah maut bachane aayi. Death came to save me like a kind-hearted mother. So with these 3-4 thoughts in mind, I made of course I've written death is devastating in its worldly impact, but it's beautiful in its spiritual force. All this, whatever is going on, we are of course caught in our day-to-day lives as human beings, we all are. But then whatever is going on in the bigger world is nothing but creation, destruction, creation, destruction. Srijan pralay, srajan pralay. That's the only game which is going on. That's the only leela which Krishna is up to.
So we can make out that your love for poetry has also been reflected in the book. In one place he writes, there are several interesting and inspiring people who we meet in our lives and feel at that instant that we shall meet them again, but never do. Dev took the contact details of the guide, but neither he or Meher nor their friends ever met him again. On the drive back, Dev's friend switched on some old Hindi film songs. Whenever a song written by Neeraj, and I'm presuming it's your idol.
Your presumption is right.
Right? Neeraj would play Rangila Re, E Bhai, Zara Dekh Ke Chalo, Karwan Guzar Gaya. They would share the history of that song, of how that song came to be created. So his friend says, Dev, you could become a music and poetry guide. And Dev replies, the two subjects we were just not introduced well to in school are history and Hindi poetry. As a student of history honors, I take completely your side because history is looked down upon by the entire world. So, how would it have helped if we were taught these subjects better? And Dev says, you have heard the saying that those who don't know their history risk repeating it. And then Hindi poetry, so he says, poetry is the most sublime form of entertainment. It nourishes the soul. There is so much wisdom and melody. If we were just taught Bachchan and Neeraj well in the Hindi-speaking regions, it is lessons of life that would even help enhance national character. So somebody who switched over to commerce with maths after class 10th, who did management in one of the top schools, who has spent his entire life doing management. When did this realization hit you that history mattered?
So, my friend who's sitting here, who you also know, he sometimes says that your middle name should be contradiction. So your name should not just be Sandeep Khanna, it should be Sandeep Contradiction Khanna. Often he calls me and he says, can I speak with Mr. Contradiction? So this one has always been there, Shubha. What will get me a better job?
Yeah.
I was told that don't go in for cricket. There are only 11 people who make it out of 600 million. So I wanted to go somewhere, but then I went elsewhere. And when I had a little bit of that financial elbow room, I decided to come back to areas which I enjoyed.
If you were allowed to go back today to class 10, and that heady period which you have described when the board result has come, and I think you have 79% or 72%.
Not me, the protagonist.
Okay, the protagonist. So, and if you were allowed to redo, no, actually not you, because the protagonist, I think, takes political science or something.
He goes in for humanities.
Yes, humanities, because he wants to become a civil servant.
He wants to become an IAS officer.
Yes, and that was so much, okay, yes, somebody is thinking like us.
That's why I always keep friends with the IAS officers like you.
So, if you were to go back, would you choose Hindi poetry or history, or would you still make the same choices?
I'll still make the same choice.
Very sensible, yeah. And who is your favorite history writer? I won't say historian, but somebody whose books you have enjoyed reading?
These modern Indian history writers are just wonderful. They are, I feel, I don't know who's seen what happened at that time, but the way they are presenting history today is so lucid and so interesting. So the ones who are writing, and one of them I think is going to be here, Vikram Sampath, Sai Deepak. These people are writing wonderful history. So I enjoy their works.
Your book also has, in some parts, there is a lot of dwelling on mythology versus beliefs. And in fact, Dave, your protagonist, he says that it's not mythology, but it is. He believes that it's history.
His comment is that it is almost conspiratorial to describe Indian history as mythology.
So how would you like to tell the audience about your views on the whole dimension of 108? You have mentioned it in several places, the mysticism associated with the number 108. Would you like to tell us a little bit of your thoughts?
So those are some of those, mind you, these are all things that I've understood from Neeraj, not from a historian, but from a poet. And 108 is a number that repeats itself in our day-to-day lives, in our customs, in our old heritage. My grandmother used to recite the Gayatri Mantra 108 times every day. There are 108 beads in the mala. There are 108 Upanishads. Krishna has 108 Gopikas in Vrindavan. The distance between earth to sun is 108 times the sun's diameter. The distance between earth to moon is 108 times the moon's diameter. When Ram is sitting in puja for Ma Shakti, when he's fighting Ravan, he's putting 108 lotuses in the puja. So this 108 keeps repeating itself. So what is 108? 108, as I understood from Neeraj, is that number which encapsulates the secret of creation and destruction. 108 adds up to 9. 9 represents Brahm. 9 represents the universal energy, which can never be destroyed. 9 never reduces, Shubha. 9 3s are 27, 7 and 2, 9, 9 4s are 36 and 3, 9, 9 6 are 50 or 5. So, 9 never reduces. 8, however, is like humankind, mankind, this kind of nature, which is always reducing. So 8 2s are 16, 6 and 1, 7. 8 3s are 24, 4 and 2, 6. 8 5s are 40. So it's always reducing by 1 till 8 meets 9 again. Till this human Atma meets Brahman again. When 8 meets 9, it becomes 72, 7 into 9 again. So it becomes complete again. So this is the simple, the Brahman and Atma explanation. It encapsulates our entire philosophy in this one line, and that's the only line which I've actually written over here, or Neeraj's line, Brahm Roop hai Ank 9, Prakriti Roop hai 8, Ek Satya hai, Shunya mein Simti Srishti Virat. So, Brahm is 9, Prakriti is 8, and Ek Satya, the one truth is that we are living in this grand zero, in this Mahashunya. So that's the interpretation of 108.
I think that was quite beautiful and very interesting, and coming from somebody who claims he has not read anything, if this is your takeaway from poetry, I mean, I'm glad you're sticking only to poetry. If you went to something, you'd get far more deeper thoughts.
As you said earlier, Shubha, there is so much of wisdom in our Hindi poetry. In just 2 or 3 of these big, poets like Neeraj and Bachchan, you don't need to read anything grand after that. You get so much.
Maths वगैरह को schools में बंद कर देनी चाहिए. We should only teach Bachchan and.
अगर आप maths बंद कर दोगे तो 108 कौन समझाएगा?
Fair. Another very interesting paragraph that he has, which is linked to what he was just speaking about, is man seeks rewards for his. He talks about the Gita actually, and he talks about the shlok which we have all heard countless times: Karmanya vadhikaraste mahapaleshu kadhachana. Doing the right thing without worrying about the reward. However, and this is a line which I found very interesting, man seeks rewards for his actions and also answers to his eternal questions, which are ultimately ascribed to God. Science solved many puzzles that religion had no answers to. The two have not necessarily and always been in conflict though. In fact, the origins of Sanatan Dharma or Hinduism were in science. The Sanatan principles are an exploration into nature and how human beings relate to it. I mean, this book is, it's one of those where every time you read it, something new pops up at you. So I want to also ask you something else which is mentioned here and which you mentioned in your conversation with me about the dichotomy of ISKCON, wherein they are devotees of Krishna, but their entire prayer is Hare Ram first and then Hare Krishna. How do they reconcile this, like your protagonists are struggling to reconcile? So
that's a question that the supporting protagonist asks the protagonist when they are driving around in Calcutta, and which is where ISKCON started from. And he says that, well, how come this is International Society for Krishna Consciousness, but they are chanting Hare Rama, Hare Krishna? And then the protagonist explains, which is my understanding from the great poet, that who is Ram and who is Krishna? We of course have read their history, but who is Ram? Kaun hai Ram? Ram comes from the word Ram. Ram means basna, Ram jana. So Ram is the sole element of universe जो सारे ब्रह्मांड में बसा हुआ है. Ram is the sole element of universe, and of course we all know him as Maryada Purushottam. Within the Maryada, he is the most Uttam Purush. He upholds Maryada like nobody else does. But then he is the sole element, Ram, coming from Ram. Krishna, Leela Purushottam, comes from the word Krish, K-R-S-H, Krish. Krish has 2 meanings. One, it means dark, Kala. The other, Krish, is Karshan, Akarshan. So Krishna, when we see something nice, our eyes get attracted. When you hear something nice, your ears get attracted. You eat something nice, your taste buds get attracted. Krishna is ruler of the senses, Akarshan. So Krishna is ruler of the senses. Ram is the sole element of the universe. Krishna helps you experience Ram. Because if we didn't have these senses, that nature has stitched us together, has stitched these 5 elements together through consciousness into the current human form, which of course will evolve. Maybe 5,000 years later we'll be slightly different. If that had not happened, if we didn't have these senses, how will we ever know that there is something beyond what we see, that there's universal energy? So Krishna helps us to experience Ram. So life is complete both with Ram and Krishna, and hence the chant Hare Rama, Hare Krishna.
Wow. One of the most comprehensive, I think, explanations. And again, I repeat, if this is coming from reading only Neeraj's poetry, it's quite amazing.
And I'm also repeating, it's coming only from reading Neeraj's poetry.
Wow. You just mentioned Maryada Purushottam Ram. Now, a lot of people who see it from a prism of gender are not exactly taken in by Ram and his Maryada. He did for whatever reasons, we're not getting into the judgment of it, but he did give up his wife at a very sensitive time of her life. But at the same time, you are so supportive of Draupadi, who is not given the kind of respect which perhaps she deserved in our social thinking and milieu. So would you tell us a little more about your thoughts on this?
I'll also just tell you about Ram, that yes, while this happened and Agni Pariksha lekar bhi Sita ko kiya na maaf Ram, ye kaisa insaf, all these songs of course keep playing. But there's another thing there, Shubha. We know 30 generations of Ram, and we know, well, we don't know what was happening in that yug, but we know one thing for sure, that how many wives did kings have those days? Many, multiple wives. Even Ram's father had 3. And after Ram had to leave Sita under whatever circumstances, did he take another wife? He lived all his life all alone. So Ram's life is so full of sorrow. That's something which we should also recognize while recognizing this. Draupadi, yeah, in our society we make, while growing up also, we all used to make fun, five husbands and all that. But what is the symbolism of Draupadi? Draupadi's, another name for Draupadi is Yagya Seni, she who has come from the Yagya. जो यज्ञ से उत्पन्न हुई है. What is it that comes from the yajna? Consciousness. When we sit in a yajna, what are we trying to do? We are just trying to enlighten our consciousness. That's why we do these havans. So Draupadi is yajna seni, consciousness, and the 5 Pandavas represent the 5 elements of nature, which are there in each one of us. Jal, Thal, Agni, Vayu, Akash. So these 5 elements of nature come to have life only when there is consciousness within them. And that's why Draupadi is married to all 5 of them. So that's the symbolism of Draupadi.
Another para. So this comes out in the middle of the chapter, when one of the friends has just finished laughing with, as he says, Goldie's torso vibrated with fiendish laughter, while Billa's expression suggested he couldn't understand what the fuss was all about. After that he says, the loneliness that accompanies a human being at birth and in death haunts us throughout the time we are here. It is a stark, brutal truth escape from which is a perennial motivation for man. Hindu scriptures describe the universe as Mahashunya, or the big zero. How can infinitesimal earthly people then have any significance bigger than zero? Yet all our lives we are trying ever so hard to shun that loneliness and fill up that zero with distractions that are sometimes lofty, sometimes mundane. And again, after writing these beautiful lines, he talks about sharing a desk with the protagonist. So I'm just trying to bring the contrast that your book is filled with, and to ask you one last question, as the young lady has mentioned to us, which is that you have also talked about the festivals of India, and Navratri is just round the corner. It is very interesting that we have Navratri twice. Would you like to tell us a little more about that?
Yeah, I've tried to explain that in the book. So these are the kind of little snippets of spirituality, Shubha, that I've tried to share. So these were my discoveries in recent times, and I thought it might interest readers. So that's why I've weaved them into the book, tried to weave them as seamlessly as possible. So on Navratris, that the 2 protagonists, and they are chatting, and he cannot visit the protagonist because it's Navratri time when he's outside India. And then he asks that why are Navratras celebrated twice? So this was just my own discovery. That's why I've described it as a hunch. So of course you have the Chaitra Navratras, which are about to come, 9 forms of the goddess, change of season. So that of course was, but then I read again a Hindi poem, and that's why no need to read anything else, by Nirala, Suryakant Tripathi Nirala, and that poem is called Ram Ki Shakti Puja. So when Ram was fighting Ravan was proving to be a very, very strong adversary, and so someone in Ram's army, Jambavan, advises Ram to seek strength from the goddess. So Ram therefore sits in a puja, Ram Ki Shakti Puja, and he's offering these 108 lotuses. He's been in puja for 8 days, and on the 9th day, when he wants to offer the 108th lotus, he finds that the 108th lotus has disappeared. And so he says that my puja will remain incomplete if I don't complete, if I don't offer the final lotus. Because that lotus is nowhere to be seen, and because he needs strength, he says, let me take out my eye, because the eye is also referred to as Chakshu Kamal. The eye is also lotus, Chakshu Kamal. So he pulls out an arrow and he's about to pluck his own eye when the goddess appears and says, I took the 108 lotus myself, and she blesses Ram with all the Shakti. And then the next day, Ram kills Ravan. That day is known as Vijay Dashmi, the 10th day. And the 9 days preceding that are celebrated as Navratras, these are Ashwin Navratras. Now Ram could not have waited for 6 months to sit in the puja because the fighting was going on at the time of, this September, October time. So therefore the Chaitra Navratras stay as they are, the change of season and praying to the 9 forms of the goddess. But then because Ram had to do that puja, at that time when he was fighting Ravan, Navratras are observed at that time as well. Those 9 days before Dasera, before Vijayadashmi, are the Ashwin Navratras, and what we are going to have now are the Chaitra Navratras.
Thank you so much. Would you like to read any passage from the book? We have 2-3 minutes. So
I can if I try and read something which is a little light. Someone said that say something spicy.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Because it became too intense. Arup, you were saying that. So let me see if I can find something which is a little light.
In fact, when he first sent me the book, he told me it's a very breezy, easy read. And in my mind, I'll be very honest, I thought all authors think they write very easy reads. I also think so. जब पढ़ेंगे तो पता चलेगा. But when I started reading it, it was actually a pleasure to read, and it flows very effortlessly. And that's how I've been able to read almost 70% of it in very short time.
Up to the readers, if they find it breezy, it's breezy. And yeah. So this just, I'll take 3 minutes to read this. This is from the chapter Man of His Word. And it's the kaleidoscope of India. Whatever is true of India, its opposite is also true, said the famous economist Joan Robinson. We discussed this yesterday, Shujit. This last sentence is not in the book. We discussed this yesterday, Shujit. Whatever is true of India, its opposite is also true, said the famous economist John Robinson. Of the numerous ways to try and understand the heterogeneity of India, the simplest is to experience her sights and sounds in different parts of the country, the foods, the dresses, the predominant vocation and trade, religious beliefs, monuments, arts and music, dialects and exclamations. As was his wont, Eklavya, who's the supporting protagonist, had his own somewhat insightful, somewhat amusing, but always innocuous descriptions of various regions of India. He had mentioned to me a few years back that North India is about demonstration of power. Emotion predominates eastern part of India. The West is professional and business-like, while South India is driven by systems and processes. Anybody thinking of India in these terms would not be wrong, but would also be far from correct. Northern part of India is not just an expression of power. It's also not just hockey, paddy and wheat fields, chole bhature and rajma chawal, Ganga and Yamuna, Bhangra and Dholak, the revered Ayodhya of Ram and Mathura of Krishna, Taj Mahal, Firosha Kotla, and Oye Hoye, Mar Sutya, Bhaiya and Paji. Nor is East just emotion. It is also not just football, argumentative economists, fish curry and rice and rasagulla, the tea plantations, Rabindra Sangeet, Brahmaputra and Hugli, the venerated Durga Puja and Pandals, Eden Gardens and Khub Bhalo and Ori Baba. The western region of India is professional and business-like, but not just that. It is also not just cricket, Bollywood films, Vada Pav and Thepla, industries and financial institutions, the Dandiya, Somnath Temple, Goa beaches, Narmada, Wankhede Stadium, Ai Shapat and Kemcho. And South India, with its systems and processes, is much more and not just chess, scientists and engineers, IT parks and auto manufacturing, idli and dosa and filter coffee, the shrines, Tirupati and Sabrimala and Meenakshi Temple, Carnatic music and Bharatanatyam, Kaveri, Chepok, Ayyo, Ama, Pah, and Che, which are exclamations in admiration and revulsion, respectively. Last line. The states and regions of India have a richness in variety, which when described would invariably require the qualification that whatever is true of India, its opposite is also true.
Thank you so much. And I think with that, we'll close this lovely session with Mr. Sandeep Khanna and his wonderful book, which I recommend that you must all grab a copy of and read it at leisure, read it slowly, read it fast, read it again and again. Do we have time for an audience?
Yes.
Okay, sure, that will be great. So maybe you can take this mic, and so if anybody has any observations, any suggestions, any questions.
So, sir, in your book, you have mentioned that the protagonist is actually not very fond of motivational speakers. Why so?
So at least I'm consistent. No, that's just a personal thing. I sometimes find these motivational speakers very manipulative. It's, putting in so much effort to, we are motivated. We don't want to die. We want a survival. We want food. We want love. We want promotion. We want all those things as human beings. That's how we are wired. So this whole further additional, I know sometimes it is good, but this, when I hear all these statements that darker the night, brighter will be the day and all that, I find it a little, contrived. I find it a bit artificial. So I have put that thought into the protagonist when he says that I try and stay away from these motivational speakers. I've tried not to do any, you very kindly, Shubha, mentioned the word inspiration at one or two places. If whatever I presented of India and life inspires anybody, nobody would be happier than me if it inspires even one person. But my effort is not to artificially instill this motivation. Come on, go ahead, get your goal. Yes, you'll do it. All that I find very, very artificial.
Sandeep, as I was reading the book, towards the last part of the book, I felt that the book was going towards a happy ending. But why did you decide to give it a sad ending?
The river has to fall in the sea, Ranjana. The dharma of the river, river का धर्म ही समुंदर में जाना है. The river has to go in the sea, and that's the reason I've referred to in the beginning also that death is the loveliest turn in the caravan of life, which the convoy makes not of its own volition, but it is the loveliest turn that makes. And we talked about that earlier as well. So, hence the ending.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
I think you missed, the paragraph you read. You missed one part, like Odisha is not there. Like
Sorry,
some catchy
I can't
words.
hear you. Can you just say it again?
I think you read some paragraphs and you mentioned like a part of India's different parts of India. I think Odisha is not mentioned there. Is it some catchy words is not there in Odisha?
The moment we started this discussion, Shubha asked me, what is your favorite city in India? And I said, Bhubaneswar.
No, in the book it is not there. So I meant any catchy words is not picking up in Odisha.
Because I could only, this book is, I could only write 640 pages, so if I have to write exclamations from every state also, it would just become endless. So, but yeah, you're right, there's no exclamation as such from Odisha, but can you please share one or two exclamations from Odisha, so in my next book I can include them?
Means Jai Jagannath.
Jai Jagannath, okay. So I'll include Jai Jagannath next time. Jai Jagannath. Just one second. Sorry, Shujit?
I said, I wish Neeraj ji had written more about Odisha. That would have come in more.
Yes, absolutely. Well said. Well said. Sorry. Well, we'll wait if there are any more questions, then, yeah. Yes, Shujit.
Something I wanted to ask yesterday, did not. So, given the fact that you got your degrees on one side and then you had your learning from Neeraj on the other side.
I got what? Sorry,
You had your degrees
Yes.
on one side and
Yes.
you got your learning from Neeraj.
Yeah, are you going to ask me which of the two I value more?
No. In your life in the corporate sector, how has Neeraj influenced you? Or how has it helped, given the learnings from...
So,
The book, of course, has a lot of Neeraj's influence, but in your professional life?
So there is a beautiful Neeraj poem which I don't fully, no, I might remember, yeah. So that line is, खुशबू सी आ रही है इधर ज़ाफ़रान की, खिड़की खुली है फिर कोई उनके मकान की, हारे हुए परिंद जरा उड़ के देख तो आ जाएगी जमीन पर छत आसमान की. So I harrowed, or that's the right word, very often, but I just kept going. So that's where Neeraj came in. Yeah, I would listen to Neeraj every night. That was my intoxication.
With this, ladies and gentlemen, this insightful conversation on a story of the last 50 years of India has come to a close. I'd like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to our esteemed guest, Shubha Sharma, for sharing her unique perspectives on India's journey. Thank you also to Sandeep Khanna for moderating this engaging discussion. Please join me in uploading them. Please give them a round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you, Shubha, for this lovely discussion, and thanks to all of you for making time for this session.
As a token of our appreciation, I'd like to request Mamta Kalia ma'am to join us on stage and present Uttariya to our speakers. Please, ma'am. Ma'am, please, stage photo. In the middle.
You come here. You can be in the center with the two. Yes.